If you want to make an African ruler angry, one thing you don't do is insult them by sitting in a chair they aren't offered. It may have seemed like a small slight, but when Queen Nzinga found herself without a chair during her first meeting with the Portuguese in 1624, she knew it was a dangerous sign. As the powerful monarch of the Bantu people, modern-day Angola, Nzinga had been trained her whole life for politics, war, and diplomacy. But no amount of training could have prepared her for the audacious move that was about to unfold. Nzinga decided to sit on the back of her servant, who stood up straight behind her throne. The Portuguese were stunned. This was unprecedented. An African queen sitting on a person instead of a chair. And if she wasn't going to be respected enough to have a seat, she would prove she was their equal in another way. Nzinga boldly declared, "I am the daughter of the sun and the moon. I am the king of kings. Whoever does not acknowledge me as his sovereign will be treated as an enemy." These proud words shocked the Portuguese because they came from someone so young. By Western standards, Nzinga was barely an adult at 40, having been born in 1583. But as the child of royalty within the Bantu kingdom, she was already a seasoned leader. The Portuguese had previously assassinated her father, the previous king, Ndongo Bandi, through trickery. Then they forced Nzinga's brother to convert to Christianity and become a puppet ruler while she slipped away to safety. When the brother proved unwilling to abandon his people, the Portuguese betrayed him and blinded him, forcing Nzinga to take power in order to protect her people. That's why she took such offense to the chair snub. The Portuguese weren't acknowledging her as an equal. They considered themselves culturally superior. And this belief motivated Nzinga's entire life. She wanted to prove to the Portuguese and the world that Africans were as civilized, strategic, and powerful as any European. But before she could wage war, she needed allies. And that meant signing a treaty with the very people who had disrespected her. The treaty prohibited both the Portuguese and Nzinga's kingdom from raiding slaves. It was a good start, but Nzinga knew it was a ruse. She bought time by pretending to be a pacifist for a decade, even converting to Christianity to demonstrate her commitment. But beneath the surface, she was far from docile. She spent those 10 years forming powerful alliances with runaway slaves, neighboring kingdoms, and anyone else who shared her hatred for the Portuguese. And she learned their language, customs, and military tactics, preparing to strike back when the time was right. Soon enough, the Portuguese grew arrogant and overconfident, believing Nzinga truly had become a Christian pacifist. So in 1641, she acted. After feigning illness, Nzinga launched a surprise attack, stealing the Portuguese weapons and killing many of their soldiers. But despite their defeat, the Portuguese were still too strong to dislodge from the land. So Nzinga continued her strategy of hit and run tactics, fighting mainly through guerrilla warfare deep in the jungles. The thick foliage gave her warriors an advantage. But it was also a problem for her enemies since few Europeans had ever fought in such terrain. Only one river separated her forces from the Portuguese strongholds, but it was wide and full of crocodiles. Yet Nzinga's military genius found a way. Her army built canoes and sailed across to raid Portuguese settlements. Over 30 years, Nzinga's guerrilla army blunted every major Portuguese attempt to conquer her lands. Despite suffering great losses, the Portuguese couldn't defeat Nzinga, who proved as elusive as the jungle itself. But sometimes strategy means knowing when not to fight. In 1657, Nzinga made a dramatic exit from the battlefield when the Portuguese sent 20,000 troops to finally crush her. The sheer size of the force looked invincible. But instead of standing and fighting, Nzinga ordered her troops to lay down their weapons and surrender. She told them, "We cannot fight against these white men. We should preserve our lives and wait for God to judge the matter. But in reality, she was preserving her strength. With her people safe, Nzinga retreated into the jungle, where she continued harassing the Portuguese and gathering more allies. Finally, in 1663, at the age of 80, Nzinga died. She left behind a thriving kingdom, a haven for refugees, and a legacy of resistance that inspired generations to come. But perhaps her greatest accomplishment was how she defied expectations of what an African queen was supposed to be. While many European women lived pampered lives isolated in palaces, Nzinga grew up learning alongside boys, mastering skills like riding, hunting, and warfare. She loved to fish with a spear and was equally comfortable leading diplomats and generals in battle. On the battlefield, she preferred wearing men's clothes, specifically military uniforms of her favorite European kings, like the French Sun King Louis XIV. She understood how clothing projected power and refused to be underestimated. Nzinga brought that same mentality to her court. She surrounded herself with brilliant minds, empowered women to rule, and appointed capable individuals based on merit rather than gender. Her military also reflected this progressive mindset. Her army consisted of 50,000 well-trained soldiers, men and women alike, armed with guns and riding horses captured from Portuguese raids. The sight of Nzinga's female warriors in battle was legendary, as they defied the common depiction of African women as passive and weak. In fact, many of Nzinga's fiercest fighters were women, and she led them into battle personally, often disguised as a man. According to one account, she once angrily confronted a general who hesitated to follow her orders because she was a woman. She barked, "Do you think I am afraid? Do you think I am only fit for the inside of a house?" That general learned a valuable lesson that day about obeying orders. While Nzinga resisted Portuguese domination militarily, she also challenged them economically by controlling trade in the region. Nzinga didn't have to rely on the Portuguese for commerce like other kingdoms did. Instead, she traded directly with Europeans from France, Britain, and Holland. She knew the value of resources like gold, ivory, and especially slaves. And she used that knowledge to turn the tables on her oppressors. By refusing to submit, Nzinga carved out Matamba into one of the largest kingdoms in Africa, stretching 400 miles across with over 2 million subjects. Her rise created a domino effect, inspiring other kingdoms to resist Portuguese colonization as well. Even after her death, the Portuguese struggled to subdue her allies, who fiercely defended their freedom. After Portugal finally gained control of Angola in the 19th century, they attempted to erase Nzinga from history. Their documents either ignored her completely or depicted her as a fearsome monster queen. But the truth of her story emerged in scattered accounts written by Jesuit missionaries and European merchants who witnessed her brilliance firsthand. European history books typically downplayed her role, focusing on themes of tribal conflict or exotic African rulers. But stories of her courage and strategy spread among Africans. And today, modern Angola honors her as a national hero. Yet outside Africa, few know her name. They forget that Nzinga didn't just resist colonization. She beat colonizers at their own game, proving Africans could match wits and warrior skills with Europeans. And in doing so, she overturned damaging stereotypes about African queens being passive figures or mythical creatures. Nzinga was a strategist and rebel, a diplomat and warrior, a mother and leader. Above all, she was a winner. They tried to erase her from history, but Nzinga never lost. This is History Rewritten. And there are more leaders they tried to hide from us. Meet the real Cleopatra. See the forgotten Egyptian queen who outmaneuvered Rome, and check out more stories of powerful women. Meet the real Cleopatra. See the forgotten Egyptian queen who outmaneuvered Rome, and subscribe to get more stories of brilliant, bold leaders.